Welcome to At Issue. We're very glad that you're here with us. My name is H. Wayne Wilson. There are 6,963 units of local government at last count in the state of Illinois. That is 1,800 more than the second state, which is Texas. And it is 54 units of government for every 100,000 people in the state of Illinois. That's a lot of units of local government. So Governor Bruce Rauner decided that there should be a task force. It's called the Unfunded Mandates on Local Government, the Government Consolidation and Unfunded Mandates Task Force. And he looked to his lieutenant governor to make that task force work. And we are pleased to have with us the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Illinois, Evelyn Sanguinetti. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
And also with us is Norm Walser. Norm has been on the show before. He has been here in the past as a representative of the Institute on Rural Affairs at Western Illinois University, but Norm has switched chairs, so to speak. Norm is now with the Center for Governmental Studies at Northern Illinois University. He's closer to his family.
That is true.
It was a year ago that I had on this program Mike Bigger of Stark County and now State Representative, then City Council Member Ryan Spain, members of your task force,
right,
to talk about this. It was shortly after you had submitted the report. We've had a year since then. In broad strokes, what has been accomplished in that 1 year period since the report came out and since I had those two gentlemen on the show?
Well, since the report came out, we put a battery in it and we made them into proposed bills. We've seen one of those proposed bills become law. As everyone knows, our chairman of DuPage County, Dan Cronin, has the enviable powers to consolidate in his county, DuPage County, the county in which I live. However, the remaining 101 counties did not have that power. So now going forward, we're looking to enlarging those powers to the remaining counties. So far, we've seen Lake County acquire such powers as well as McHenry County. So that's the positive note on the task force. However, we do have other pieces of legislation that we're trying to push. Change is not easy, so we'll still continue to push this legislation on consolidation and unfunded mandates because it's a conversation worth having during this fiscal shortfall.
And for clarification, this is most of this is permissive, not mandatory in terms of consolidation.
Correct, correct.
So how are you going, let's say some legislation passes that enables the local units of government to consolidate or encourage some sort of cooperative sharing. How are you going to convince the local governments that this is a good idea? We've been using townships, et cetera, for a long time. Where's the change going to come from?
Yeah, funny you should mention that, H, because the minute that this task force was put together, I started hearing from townships, I started hearing from counties, from cities, and they wanted to know what unit of government was on the chopping block. And the answer was none, because again, this task force was put together to alleviate the regulatory burdens that exist so that if your community wanted to consolidate, it was up to you. In other words, it was giving power back to the local government to make its decisions. Because you know what? It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's not good for some communities, but consolidation is definitely necessary in others.
This is about consolidation. This is about unfunded mandates. You did a study in support of the task force needs. What did you find in your study?
Well, I think we found quite a bit of enthusiasm. We sent out an electronic questionnaire to 7 types of governments, and we had responses from about 500, and they all provided individual examples of mandates they felt really weren't needed any longer. Some of them provided estimates of costs, some of them didn't, but there really were a lot of good ideas that came out of it. And I think, as to follow Lieutenant Governor, I think what it basically suggested to them was the task force clearly is taking their ideas, trying to somehow make them operational, put them into law. So I think the main issue is how do we figure out ways local ways to consolidate governments or do shared services. And I think in many respects, the shared services may be the more important part, because now we have a number of local governments who actually are aggressively trying to put together shared services with some success.
Let's talk about shared services. Is that one of the ways that may lead to some consolidation in the future to eliminate duplicate forms of government?
Absolutely. So during the course of the year, while we were meeting all over the state of Illinois, putting together this task force report, we started hearing excellent stories about units of government coming together on their own power, without the help of Springfield, to streamline services within their communities, thereby getting savings for the taxpayer. We heard these stories over and over, and we vowed that the moment we issue the task force report, we'd also issue a journal on shared services and best practices. And actually, we unveiled that about a week ago, just extolling the virtues of shared services. So just a few days ago, we were in Urbana, and their park district, as well as their school district, combined resources, personnel, equipment, so that they could open up an aquatic center for all of their community. This is great. There's savings, and the people benefit from that. If you take a look at our journal on shared services best practices, you're going to see 26 other examples. And again, it's a byproduct of the task force report and units of government getting together and doing things on their own power to give effective, efficient government to the people.
Let's talk about some of, there are 27 recommendations with regard to consolidation. Let's talk about some of those first. And once again, these are permissive in nature because there is currently state legislation that prevents consolidation occurring or streamlining efficiencies from occurring. For instance, there's a cap right now on the size of a township. If townships wanted to merge, they're prevented from being larger than 126 square miles. I'm not sure where that came from, some legislation from long ago. So there is a change in that 126 square mile size so that people can say, I want 4 townships in McHenry County is one example.
Right.
So they can do that, or if the legislation passes.
Correct, correct. And again, it's all about empowering these local communities. Should they want to consolidate, they could do so. And by way of example, I know that Evanston a few years back wanted to consolidate the township into Evanston, and they were only able to do that by virtue of legislation. We wanted to empower the other communities to be able to do that if that was their wish.
Is part of that problem the fact that some, for instance, Peoria, Township of Peoria, City of Peoria. The city council is also the town council, but they can't merge the two because they're not coterminous. Is that the problem?
Yes, that's one of the issues. And hopefully some of the legislation would in fact, adjust that so it makes it easier.
So let's talk about some townships. We talked about the 126 square miles. There are, in terms of assessment, there is a requirement that if you have fewer than 15,000 parcels, you can change some things?
Correct. That's one of our recommendations in that regard. Again, it's because, and I think, Dr. Walser, you brought it up during one of our meetings, that these roles came about years ago. A lot of people wonder why so, but really it was because of transportation and the lack thereof back in the day. But now that it's the 21st century, these archaic roles should no longer be in the books because we've grown as a community. You have anything to expand in that regard? Because I remember that was really important, that we've become a different community.
Well, when you think back, you don't have to actually think back very far. But we have email, we have all electronic communications now, the electronic technology, computers. I mean, we're already talking 50 years. So the kind of things that we needed in a more rural environment, more agrarian environment, required an intermediate level of government in some cases, or it was convenient. Really, those needs have totally changed.
And
Right.
and the 15,000 parcels in that means that assessors can then go to a county assessor instead of having each township have an assessor, and that helps because assessors are difficult to find in some townships.
Well, it is, and a lot of the bigger cities are using mass appraisals. So you have a statistical program where you have hundreds of thousands of parcels, and you can get a better job of assessing, more equitable, these kinds of things using some sort of a statistical package. And it's not only cost saving, it's probably better. And you wouldn't be able to do that in a small unit of 4 or 5 parcels.
Another one of those old laws is
Right.
that it used to require that if you had fewer than 5 miles of roadways in a township, then you could consolidate. But now that needs to change
Right, right.
to fewer than 25 miles. Now, what is the prospect in your estimation that we may see counties take over roads in the entire county instead of having townships? Is that, and not that every county would do that, but is
Right.
that one of the benefits that may occur?
In some communities, yes. And I'm always very careful because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Again, the whole task force report is about empowering local communities to determine whether that's the case or whether it's not the case.
You mentioned the Urbana situation with the Aquatic Center. The idea of cooperation, rather than having eliminate a form of government first, this might be the first step, is have some sort of cooperative effort, and then the public sees this is working.
Right.
Then maybe they might say, because we've got 7,000 units of government, nearly that many. So is that the hope? Is that where agreed upon by the local residents that could occur?
Right, and we're seeing it already. Just last week we were also in Chatham Township, and they're sharing equipment, they're sharing expertise in order for these units of government from within the township to start sharing services, and they're great. They're doing just wonderful, and again, it's getting the conversation started, so you're right, it's a great start to consolidation for those who are a little bit weary still.
Chatham Township is located
Well, yeah, right in Sangamon County.
in Sangamon County?
Right.
Okay. There's a sense, historically speaking, Norm, that I want my local government. I want my road commissioner. I know my road commissioner. If I've got a problem with a road, I call up my road commissioner because I know him on a first-name basis. How do you get by that?
I think it'll happen in a couple of ways. One is that the population obviously is getting older, and I think the younger people coming in may not have quite as long a tie or allegiance to the earlier form of government. So I think that'll be one thing that happens. The second thing, though, I think is that some of the areas, the smaller areas, are going to actually be forced into taking serious action because of loss of population, declining assessed valuation, or declining tax rates. I think these kinds of issues will really, at some point, kind of overcome the allegiance to this is the way we've always done it, or I know my neighbor. But I think also you're finding the few of the places that have called us or talked to us about these kinds of issues, you're seeing people on the boards of some of these groups that are saying, I mean, they're well-meaning people, they're trying to do the right thing, and I think in some cases they're saying, are we really the best approach to do this in the future, given all the kind of technology and things we have? And they're coming up with the question of, let's look at some other alternatives. As the Lieutenant Governor said, in Chatham Township is an excellent example
Right.
of things that are going on.
Many of these will require legislation.
Right.
So you've said you've traveled around the state and you're promoting where appropriate consolidation or working with unfunded mandates, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But legislation has to come first in many cases to allow them to make that decision.
Right.
How optimistic are you that you can get some of this, if not all of it, pushed through the legislature?
I'm incredibly optimistic. You know, there have been task force reports on consolidation in years past, and they've been great reports, and ultimately they end up on a shelf and they collect dust. But right now, the climate is different. We have a fiscal shortfall. So people are ready to have this conversation. There is an appetite. And based upon that appetite, this is why I'm so positive that we'll be able to put batteries on all of our proposals over time. Keeping in mind that change is tough, this is the right time for change.
Do you have any bills that have passed yet?
Well, we have the one on counties.
DuPage County you
mirroring
mentioned.
DuPage County to Lake and McHenry.
Are there bills that are in the queue that could pass this legislative session?
Yes, there are bills in the queue, and also, too, you've heard about the Senate talking about working on a grand compromise deal, and that includes some of our recommendations on consolidation. So again, we remain hopeful because these are conversations we have to have.
And so I assume then you've been talking to Christine Radogno and with John Cullerton about the grand bargain?
Well, I haven't directly. I've been touring the state because we just unveiled our shared services and best practices report. So later on today, we're going to be talking to another community on that. But I know that our governor, Bruce Rauner, has encouraged the Senate to keep working.
Tell me about the best practices. You said you just released that report?
Right. The report, we kicked it off about a week ago, and it was at a community college where they were actually sharing services with a local school board so that they could have dual enrollment credits. And this is another excellent example of two units of government combining and sharing services, ultimately to benefit the public. And then you also see some savings coming out of that. I believe it's Heartland College that we were at over in Normal.
Heartland College in Bloomington,
Yes.
Normal, yes.
Yeah, in Normal.
I would jump in, H, also to say that what has happened as an outgrowth of the task force deliberations has been that some of the other units of governments, for example, the municipalities, now have their own agenda on moving cities forward, and it contains elements that were in the task force. So I don't think it's just will the task force legislation advance or advance fast enough. I think it's more a question of the members, the different types of government are saying there's something in it for us, it makes sense, we're going to move it ahead. So I think a lot of things will happen. But again, it may be difficult to say, well, this was the causation.
As a matter of fact, it might be the Illinois Municipal League, for instance, because the study, the task force studied not just consolidation, but also unfunded mandates. And as an example, the Illinois Municipal League reported that since 1982, 266 unfunded mandates affect municipalities, and there's 145, I think, that affect school districts.
Right.
Those are unfunded mandates.
Right.
In general, what is the sense of the task force with regard to unfunded mandates?
Well, we're very positive about our report because the component of unfunded mandates is new. We've never had a thorough statewide study on unfunded mandates, and we're so grateful to Northern Illinois University and their Center for Government Studies and Dr. Walzer because we were able to collect the data to try to find out all the unfunded mandates that are out there at this time. And for the public, for those of you who don't know what unfunded mandates are, it's when big government tries to tell little government what to do, but it's unfunded. They don't give us the money in which to carry these orders out with. And having served in the Wheaton City Council, I could tell you that one unfunded mandate for us, it was a B&R bonnet, was the minimum manning requirements at our fire stations. Well, you know, as a local Wheatonite, we know what we need in our fire stations. We have a pulse on the people, not big government, not Springfield. So this is why this component is so exciting, to get rid of these unfunded mandates, to get rid of that requirement that makes units of government have to publish when we have the internet now. Things like that.
Is one of the problems is that sometimes big government, the state, says to small government, you need to do this, but it doesn't apply across the board.
Well, I think the issue, if I understand your question, going back to what Lieutenant Governor said earlier, it's the issue of one size doesn't work in all places. And so, as we talked earlier, there has been legislation through Springfield that will say this only applies to certain size of governments or something like that. But I don't think there's enough recognition, really, that what might work in the Chicago area will probably not work in deep southern Illinois. in many instances because of the size of the government, the capacity that they have, the expertise involved, these types of things. So I think it's really important to do whatever we can to allow that discretion at the local level. So it's difficult to cause the General Assembly or decision makers in general to hold back when in fact a good idea comes in and is proposed to them and they say, yes, makes sense, we ought to do this. There was legislation very early or 30 years ago in Illinois that basically has an unfunded mandates act. So there is legislation where the General Assembly is to provide funding, but somehow it gets missed.
As a matter of fact, one of the task force recommendation is for constitutional amendment with
Right.
that regard.
Right. Put some money behind that order because our local communities need it. You know, when we do not put money behind these unfunded mandates, where do you think our local communities have to look? They got to depend on their staff, and a lot of times they've already gone on that fiscal diet, and they're already working very, very short-staffed.
Or they go to the property tax and raise it.
Right, pass that on to the consumer.
So a couple of examples of unfunded mandate changes, your recommendations. What about the publication of legal proceedings in newspapers?
Right. Well, you know, we have that unfunded mandate that mandates that whenever a unit of government is going to give a notice, it should be done so by paper. And that's incredibly costly. So why not? Why not put it in the internet? Or why not go the virtual route? It is the 21st century. Not to mention that, again, units of local government could decide to continue to publish, but they need to have the power to enact those savings on their own. That's what's important.
Document retention, something similar in that regard?
Correct. Document retention, make it electronic. It's a 21st century after all.
What about physical education? Right now, I think Illinois is one of 6 states, if I'm not mistaken, that requires physical education every year.
Right.
You've suggested otherwise.
Right. Well, physical education is an unfunded mandate, and we've suggested, again, giving the power back to local communities. Give the power back to the parents and also the principal of the school, the teachers, to determine whether this child that's in football should also have to do the physical ed requirement when they're already doing a component of physical ed elsewhere. It's up to the parent and it's up to the schools to make these determinations, not big government to say that this physical ed requirement should be in place.
What about the recommendation from the Task Force on Driver's Education?
Right. Well, again, it's an unfunded mandate. And right now what they want to do is contract it out because there will be incredible savings in that regard.
The Lieutenant Governor headed up this task force, and she's very passionate about it, obviously, and she wants legislation created. She wants to see cooperation amongst local governments. May I call you a statistician in this regard? That you did a lot of the behind the scenes, you collected a lot of information. What's your assessment overall on how this may move forward? How effective might this be?
Well, I think one of the main contributions of the task force was really to raise the visibility of the issue. And I think the journal that just came out is just one more step. But there are a lot of local government officials now, I think, that are beginning to ask, aren't there better ways that we could do this? I mean, they recognize the technology, they recognize all the other advancements as well. So I think what will happen, a couple of things will happen in the future. I like to think when I was teaching regularly, I like to think of the idea of giving permission. And if in the private sector, if the boss comes in and says, here's what we're going to do, everybody has permission to act. But in the public sector, where does that permission come from? If I stand up at a council meeting or some other meeting and say we ought to do this, who am I? How does it matter? I think raising the level of discussion at the statewide level that has been done has really empowered local people, has given them permission to say, well, over here, here's what they did and saved $100,000. Why can't we be doing that? And I think you're going to see those discussions more and more now.
One of the topics that created discussion amongst task force members was the prevailing wage exemption. Can you explain that in brief terms?
Right. Well, during the whole year that we were meeting all over the state of Illinois, we had a lot of experts come and testify, and then we had leaders of units of government come in and tell us what ailed them. And certain mayors, managers would tell us that a big problem for them was workers' comp. Another big problem for other communities or the same communities was also the Prevailing Wage Act as it pertained to them and their ability to enter into contracts and save money. And based upon that testimony, we brought it up to vote in our bipartisan task force, and it passed. And this is why it's so important to make it legislation, because this is something that's been testified to.
And with that, we have run out of time. We'll continue the conversation after the cameras are off with the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Illinois, Evelyn Sanguinetti. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And to Norm Walser, who is with the Northern Illinois University Center for Governmental Studies. I was going to say Western because you've been there so long, but he's at Northern Illinois now. Thank you to both of them. We'll be back next time with another edition of At Issue. Please join us then.